Welcome to the second edition of Rugby Unfiltered, and this week will be a lot more unfiltered than last week. But before we get there, let me introduce the man of the moment, Eugene Loffie Eloff.
Hi, Jan. I'm not so sure about that man of the moment, but yeah, exciting to be back at the program. And after the first week of the end of the year tours, a lot of information that we can share, unfiltered.
And we have a very special guest this week. We'll talk a bit more of him later, a man from Dispatch, and definitely a very interesting and colorful character. But before we go there, Eugene, it's Springboks in France, and we played Japan last week, and a lot happened. And there's a lot in the media about a certain player. I think Sasha Feinberg Ngonzulu is picking up a lot of flack. It's a case of the highest threes catch the most win, but all the talk about him being arrogant. I mean, you've coached some very interesting characters in your life.
Yes, Jan, you know, there's a lot of hype about Sasha's arrogance, as they call it. And I think one of the press releases that they said that he said he can back it up with his play, which is actually a fact. But what I have found with players, especially when they're very young and they hit that platform, it actually boosts their confidence. But other people see it as arrogant. So I'm sure Rassie and the coaches will just sort of keep him grounded, because also when you become arrogant like that, you become a target for your opponents. He's very, very young. He's got a long way to go. But me personally, I like it when a player is more humble. But as he said himself, you know, he can back himself up saying that. And I'm sure it's just tongue in the cheek sort of remark he made, because that's the biggest critics currently, that he is becoming windgat, to use the Afrikaans word.
Yeah. Eugene, I want to take you back, and you know him very well. He was actually at his wedding. Andre Pretorius, when he was young, he was also extremely talented and very... I remember a game he played against Crusaders at Ellis Park, and he stepped half the Crusaders team. He scored a magnificent individual try. But he matured later. But and unlike those players often seen as individualistic, but that's just their talent. It's their amazing talent. And there's we know that a player like Willie Leroux has matured so much over the years, and we've seen Andre Pretorius mature. I mean, you know him very well. That is where Sasha will eventually end up.
Yeah, Jan, you know, upbringing and where he was at school and his background's got a big influence on his personality. And all three of the guys that you talk about now have got different personalities, and actually are growing the game in different eras. In the modern era, social media is on your doorstep every day, and therefore the guys are actually much more prepared for that. I think the one danger that there is from a coaching point of view, all three of them are so talented. All three of them have got the X factor. And one must make sure, coaches must make sure that you don't take that X factor away by coaching him in a box. But Rassie is wise, and he will not do it. I think the main thing is just to channel his energy, and especially his... I'm sure the media officer or whoever is in control of that will also guide him how to approach the media, how to approach social media, because, as I said in the beginning, it can become a target on his back as well.
Yeah, I'm just about worried. There's a movement towards over-coaching, and now I'm not talking about Rassie coaching, I'm talking about media coaching, over-coaching the players, and they become so sanitized in the media briefing. You still want to see a character. You still want to see Willie's character. You still want to see Sasha's character. So you don't want him to just feed the media cliches. And I think we risk going down that way if we... And I understand what you say about coaching him, but you still want to see his character. Why become a bland, sanitized, cliched personality when what you want from him on the field is genius?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got a spot on. And if we think about it now, he didn't talk before the game. He talked after the game. And he was brilliant. So, you know, the people can say what they want. What I like, we've got quite a few players in the Springbok setup now that have got the X factor and that are expressing themselves on the field and Ross is allowing them to do it, and it's brought a new dimension to our rugby, which is a threat to the rest of the teams.
Yeah, and just before we move on to the test match itself against France, there's another player which also starting to get some flack, is RG Snyman. And he is, because of his offloads, but that's a skill he's got. It's a different skill he's got. And yes, maybe now and then he can hold onto the ball and not try every offload. It is an issue, but that's still the character you want to see. I remember at the World Cup in 2023 when RG told us about his music taste. It was so out there, but that is what makes rugby special. And we'll get to our special guest later. He comes from an era where characters were the highlight of the game. And I'm go back to what I said. Don't coach that out of the players. Don't make them sanitized, cliched versions in front of the media. That's not how you sell the game. What you sell the game is Sasha's brilliance, RG's offloads, even though some of them go the wrong way. In a big game, maybe curtail it a little bit, but you still want to see that character. And that's where what we got to avoid, is to coach these guys into a cliched, sanitized box.
Yes, Jan, RG is a phenomenal human being. Off the field, he's a soft-spoken, gentle giant. On the field, he's massive. He's got a huge influence on the game, in the lineouts, in the offloads, so they can say what they want about him. He's a wonderful player. I think if we can wrap up the Japan game, Jan, it's one should not read too much in it. Those Japanese were not up to this game. And I think losing Ox is a big loss for the Boks, but it creates a new opportunity for a youngster to step in and get an opportunity. But I don't think we must read too much in that scoreline and that game.
Exactly. So let's move swiftly on to France, Paris, the game of the year, the Springbok game. One or two very big games. I think we must. For me, I know a lot of people are talking about Ireland, and Ireland will be a big game. By the time we get there, it's going to be a massive game. But I think to make the year-end tour a success, and I know France has lost a couple of players, so they haven't got Dupont and those guys, and one of their top flyers are injured. But I think the game in Paris on Saturday is the game of November for me. If the Springboks win on Saturday, they are halfway towards making into a success. Yeah, I know there's other games. There's Italy and there's Wales. But I think Paris on Saturday, winning is vital for us. And the second part is Saturday will be Siya Kolisi's 100th test. And that's why also it's important that we win on Saturday. And I want to pause a little bit at Siya, Eugene. I mean, you've seen some phenomenal players and phenomenal captains. You've dealt with some phenomenal captains in your life. And Siya is something special. It reminds me a bit of Francois Pienaar. People don't always like the way he plays. They don't always think he's the best player. But he's such a phenomenal leader. And you can't take away the fact that he is our most successful Springbok captain ever.
No, that's a fact. You cannot take away that history. And people will always be opinionated about who's the best and who was the best. As I say, rugby evolves. And Siya Kolisi has really stood tall. He did a wonderful job. And I think he's a good ambassador. He's a great ambassador for SA Rugby. Come what may, I'm just talking about on the field, not off the field. But before we go to this game, you touched on something quickly in the beginning of your discussion about Ireland, about the Ireland game. If we talk about Ireland and New Zealand, I think Ireland had them against the ropes. And the moment when Savia came up, Adi came up, it changed the game. So Ireland's going to be a great game. But if we talk about, there's a lot of emotion, Jan, around this game, France. We have to win it, and it's all emotional stuff. Siya's 100 games, emotional stuff. We have to win it to end off a good year, it's emotional stuff. I think for any coach, you want to go into the game. Of course, you go to win it, but you want to see if what you trained, you can implement on the field, regardless of the result. You go to win. But I think, again, going with a few new combinations, and that's why Rossi is only announcing the side on Thursday. He also wants to see how the French team is going to look. But as you said, it's going to be a massive collusion. And at the end of the day, it's the top Northern Hemisphere team playing against the top Southern Hemisphere team. And it's going to be a spectacular game, I reckon.
Yeah, the Six Nations champions against the rugby champions winners, South Africa. So you're right. Looking at the game, I think we'll be amiss if we don't look back at what happened in 2023. And I was privileged enough to be there. And that quarterfinal, that's part of what the hype around this game on Saturday is. We beat France in the quarterfinal, 29-28. We came from behind. France was on fire in the first half. And throughout the playoffs, the quarterfinal, 1 point, the semi-final against England, 1 point, we came from behind. Against New Zealand, we were leading, and we just managed to hang on, but we won by 1 point. That is the quality of the Springbok team, and that's why, as they say, you don't always look back to history because that's going to help you win today. But you know what worked there. We know that it's going to rain on Saturday. This time of the year, Paris is a wet place. It's a wonderful stadium. The surface will be fine, but it's still going to be wet. So it's important to take those lessons, and Rassie would have taken those lessons from 23, and he would have made changes. So our team has changed slightly. It will be slightly different to the team from the quarterfinal. But that emotion in that stadium will be so special. It's a very special place to be when the French start singing, because they, unlike our guys, they don't just ole ole. They sing proper songs. It's a bit like the Irish, and that's what makes the atmosphere in that stadium so special. It's the songs they sing and the atmosphere and the build-up to the game. And that's what's going to make this a special game for me. And that's why for Sia, and he deserves to have his 100th test in a special land, such a beautiful stadium, and such a big game.
If it's going to rain, it's going to be wet for both teams. I know the media is saying it's a revenge match for the French. It's not. I know Galtier personally. He's not that sort of coach that will say this is a revenge game. He will exactly do what Rassie wants to do, and that's get his guys to implement and execute everything they trained. And the one thing the French can do, they can match up with our pack of forwards. So I'm looking forward to that attrition, collusions. But, you know, they haven't played for a while. They haven't played a side like South Africa for a while. We haven't played them. And that's what makes it exciting, you know. You can have perceptions who's going to bash who and who's going to do what. But at the end of the day, we'll know after 20 minutes into the game where the force is going to. And you know, as I said, the weather and the atmosphere and everything is the same for both sides.
Exactly, yeah. The one advantage we will have, sorry, we'll move on now, but the one advantage we will have is that they played this particular team, or the bulk of the team that's going to face South Africa on Saturday, last played in the Six Nations in July when they toured New Zealand. Very, very few of these players. I think they left 20 of their players, 15 or 20 of their players at home. I know only 2 players of the French champions to lose travelled with the team to New Zealand. So this specific combination hasn't played since the Six Nations. And whereas the Springboks played together in the rugby championship, they played in July, they played in the rugby champs. So we know each other a lot better. So that makes it for us a lot easier to do. So, yeah. But, Eugene, before we catch all the other games, we will touch on all the other games. There's a lot of games on Saturday. So, and I do want to touch on the other games. I think it's time now that we introduce a very special friend of yours, a gentleman by the name of Puerto Himan.
Yeah, no, Jan is it's a great guy. He's a good friend, and we go back a long time. We actually go back into the military days. We were in the parachute battalion together. Actually, me and him and Donnie Gerber were there. We had a phenomenal rugby side. I think that year we won Koffsies, which was history. But a soft-spoken person. He loves the game. And we bumped into each other a few times when he coached the Bulls, when he coached Griquas. And then, of course, he also had the stint that he had with MLR at the Sabercats. But a fantastic guy, Puerto.
Indeed, a very, very special person. I spoke to Puerto, and he addressed one of the things, and he will address it, the club that he gave a guy in America, the MRL, that famous club. We've got a video of that, which we'll play as well. But Puerto is, like you say, a very soft-spoken person and such a friendly person. It's actually just a pleasure to speak to. So I think let's not waste our viewers' time. Let's introduce Puerto to the podcast.
Puerto, thank you for chatting to Rugby Unfiltered. You just come back from America. You're now coaching at Boland. You guys had a wonderful season. But just a level up at the URC, we've seen some interesting changes. We've seen Jake White 3 finals and he's gone. We see John Plumtree, it's just been said, he's gone at the end of the season, and he's got this massive team. Talk to us about the challenges of coaching, even when you have success. How rough is this landscape, coaching landscape?
As I always say to the guys, rugby is a cutthroat business. You know, you're in the player's hands. I mean, you can do whatever you want. If the player cross that line, it's in their hands. You know, so if the team goes well, plays well, and they do well, it's the players. If the team doesn't do well, it's the coach. It's always like that. It will never change. I mean, if you look at Heineke Meyer, he played he was the coach in the World Cup. They lost against Japan. That same year, they lost with 2 points against New Zealand. They were unfortunate to lose that game against New Zealand in the semi-final. You know, and then he was gone. Suddenly, he's not good enough. You know, you look at Jake White. You know, as you said, he won three competitions, and suddenly he's struggling in the URC and he's gone. They don't want him anymore. Plumtree got this big team with all the Springboks. So his career is in their hands, and they don't perform. Is it only the coach, or is it the attitude of the players? So it's a difficult one, but unfortunately it's all over the world. I mean, I was in America, same happened there. If the team doesn't win, the coach is blamed and he's gone. You know, So in Europe, the same thing. The coach doesn't perform, and it's not only rugby. I mean, soccer is the same. You see how many guys is sacked when they don't perform in that high level. But we know it when we took on the job. We know, hey, this you will be fired. So one or other time you will be fired. That's just the name of the game.
So where's Puerta been fired?
No, I lost my job when I was at the Bulls. I coached. I was the head coach, and then Jake was appointed while COVID was on. So I unfortunately I read that in the papers. I didn't. Nobody told me that you're not there anymore. So I phoned Jake, and I had no problem with Jake. I congratulated him, and I asked him, "Do you want me to assist you?" And he said, "No, he's going to bring in his own people." I said, "I understand. There's no problem, but that for me it was just difficult. I must phone Jake, that's the new director, to find out where I'm standing." But that's rugby. I understand that. But for the rest, I was fortunately not sacked, and I always enjoyed what I do. I make it comfortable for myself, and I enjoy working with players. That's my passion, to work with players. And you have the Boland. It's just unbelievable. The passion here is just. I can see myself ending my career here with these guys.
I have to ask you, Puerto Human Dispatch to Puerto Human Boland. Is that the full circle? Is that the beauty of the game? And you had a Super Rugby title in 2007 with the Bulls, and you've been in Japan. There's been amazing highlights, but is this not?
No, this is. I mean, I'm getting older. I'm not getting younger. Starting with Dispatch, I mean, that was just amazing. I mean, we were little town in. We always said we're close to Uitenhage. You said no, not close to Uitenhage. We are Dispatch. So we grew up there. We played there for the love of the game. There was no money involved. Then I became a coach. There was money. I mean, I made big money in Japan when I was over there. And that's the name of the game. It's professional now. They must look after the players. The players must look after themselves. But coming from Dispatch, Japan, America, Bulls, wherever I was, Greek was. I think this is a place where I can finish my career. I really enjoying it here.
One last question, Puerta. There was a very interesting incident at Cybercats. Please talk to us about the club.
No. It was funny. What happened is we played this game. I think it was against New York or Los Angeles. I can't remember. In any case, so what happened is we had a strategic break, and the coach was allowed to go onto the field at that stage. I cleared that before the game with Jonathan Kaplan. He was the head of the referees in America. And then strategic break, Heineke went onto the field to have a chat with the players. And there is in C, the strict condition goes, no, Heineke, and he go and pull Heineke. Said, you're not allowed here. And Heineke said, leave me. And he keep on pulling him. And I went onto the field and I said, what are you doing? And he said, yeah, but Heineke is a cheat. I said, and I said, what do you say? He said, hey, have a go. You don't say to a dispatcher, have a go. And then, unfortunately, I had a slap of the guy, and afterwards they told me that I took a chance because this is a cage fighter. But but then after the game, he came to me, apologized, he bring a beer to me. I said, no, I'm not drinking. I give you the beer to one of the players, and we were friends after that.
Yeah.
But then. After the game, I phoned my wife, and she was laughing. What happened? And I said, no, and the next morning, I phoned again, and she was crying. I said, what's going on now? She said, you're in the front page of the Sunday paper. So I didn't realize it because in America, rugby is so small.
Yeah.
So, and then it was all over Facebook and all this social media. And so I actually put the MLR on the map.
Well, maybe you should slap a cup of tea. Peter, thank you very much.
We talked about Peter's personality, and it must have taken a lot to get him to react that way. My question to him is, because I was in Texas as well, and you get that heated feeling sometimes because they are arrogant. But I want to ask him, why did he not floor the guy? Why was it only a club?
I think Peter answered that specific question when he said he was rather lucky because he didn't realize the other guy was a cage fighter. So, and as you can see in a video, they knew there was trouble coming, so they kept the two of them apart. But that's the fun of the game. I mean, they both got a 6-week ban. The two of them both got a 6-week ban for that. But you've been there as well. In the good old days, I remember when Kevin de Klerk floored George Rautenbach in a Currie Cup game. And all he got was a few minutes behind the post. So that's part of life. But you see, let's move on to Saturday's games. I want to finish off with the Jan Hendrik saga, but let's first quickly touch on Saturday's games. We start the day, and we can only touch on the big games. We start the day with Ireland-Japan. So poor Japan, after being clubbed by the Springboks, 60 points against the Springboks. They now face an Ireland team that's coming off a loss against New Zealand, very determined to rectify and get back on the winning ways against South Africa. I think Japan is in for another big hiding.
Yes, Jan, I hope, I'm sure Eddie would go to the guys and he will take out of the game against South Africa, against the Boks, what didn't work and what they did wrong, and maybe implement that against Ireland. It's going to be a different type of game, but Ireland is a well-organized, well-coached side. So I agree with you. It's going to be a massive score, but it'll be great to see if Eddie can bring a bit of a change the dynamics of the game plan and the Japanese. And one thing, maybe their captain must not be in the media so much, saying that he's not afraid of the physicality of South Africa because he's going to get another physical game.
I agree. Straight after that, we've got another massive game, Scotland against New Zealand. Outside of the Paris game, I think this is probably the big game on Saturday. I think Scotland, as brave as they are, they're going to struggle against New Zealand. And I would happily put some money on New Zealand getting another win because they are going for a Grand Slam. New Zealand's trying to get a Grand Slam, win all 4 matches, beat all 4 home unions. So I think Scotland's in for a long day.
Yeah, I agree with you. Scotland's big score against the USA might give them a lot of courage and self-belief, which is good for rugby. But when it's on the field and it's attrition and the game gets tough, then you have to dig deep. Make no mistake, I think the Scots are going to give it a go. So it's going to be a big score, but it's going to be tough. But I agree with you that I think New Zealand, if they get momentum, they're a difficult side. If I was Townsend, I would just get not play spoiling rugby, but get Scotland to try and disrupt the momentum of New Zealand. Once you play in behind them, they can also buckle. But it's going to be an interesting game. It's not going to be a high scoring game. I think the Scots are going to bring it to them. Braveheart.
That is followed by 2 interesting games. England against Fiji. I think England will probably play their B team. And then Italy, Australia, before we get to the big game of the day. But England, Fiji, big win for England. I don't think Fiji has got the depth. And Italy, Australia, I think Italy might surprise Australia, but I suppose the bookies will have their money on Australia.
Yeah, I agree. I think Australia is going to win. Is going to win that game pretty easily. I know it's in Italy, and they can be a difficult side, but they're hurting, and they're not a team that will go lie down. I think they're going to regroup and come back with a bang. They want to, you know, they will definitely want to make a statement. But I don't think Fiji England's going to be that entertaining. I know the Fijis like to open up the game and play it at pace, on the feet. But England's going to play their normal, boring, slow poison rugby, which is very effective for them.
And then Sunday, we've got Wales, Argentina. That's going to be an interesting game because I don't know. It'll give us an indication that Rassie will have a chance to look at Wales and see, because we play Wales and we know how strong Argentina is. They beat New Zealand. They beat Australia. They lost twice to us, but just the last game was just by 2 points. So I think Argentina has got a good chance of upsetting Wales, and it'll give us a good chance to see what sort of Welsh team we're going to face in the last tour match.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be there's no contest. I think the Aussies are going to be too strong for them. Wales are really battling to get their rhythm back, to get their momentum back, to get their style back. The Aussies is on high. I actually rate them to be one of the underdogs in the next World Cup. Now, again, working with those Latin American guys, you don't know who pitches up on the day of the game. If they pitch up, if they get possession and they get ball in the front foot, it's going to be a big score. I really hope that Wales can lift it, because we need those teams in the world of rugby. I hope for them that that they've got the belief and the personnel to keep Argentina out of their try line. But I think this Aussie side is very underrated.
And Eugene, I want to finish off. We've spoken quite a bit about the Springbok game, so I'm not going to go back there. I want to finish off with the Jan Hendricks saga. We always complain about disciplinary processes. And to me, this is a case where I just don't understand. I know the legal stuff. I know there's so much legal jargon, and I've read both the original disciplinary hearing and the appeal. And it's so easy. It's like you are guilty and you got to prove your innocence. And that's a big problem for me, the whole process of Jan Hendrik. And I just want to say, and I've said it before, and I'll say it here as well. If Jan Hendrik, like that guy said, grabbed, squeezed, and twisted that guy's testicles for 3 to 5 seconds. So we'll speak about the discrepancies about his testimony. But if Jan Hendricks grabs, squeezes, and twists your testicles for 3 to 5 seconds, you will speak a few octanes higher, and you will not be so calm in the disciplinary hearing or to the referee. He was very calm. There was no pain. He knew he was in trouble. So he had to find a way. So he started making up this excuse. And somebody must show me the evidence, that thing, that obscured arm at a weird angle. There's people's bodies contorted in weird angles. What about the player being driven back when his legs caught under another player? And we've seen Pieter-Steph being injured. We've seen guys' knees being buckled in and out for a long time, being buckled in a contact sport. So to say, oh, his arm was in a weird place, that to me, that's rubbish. But that's just me. But I just it's something that really irks me, that the disciplinary processes are so slanted towards just one. The disciplinary officer's word and the player's word, the Connacht player's word, carried so much weight. And Jan Hendrik, whose first language is not English, to then say, oh, he didn't say much, because the poor kid only can hardly speak English. So what are they expecting to say? Did they take into consideration that his first language is Afrikaans and that he's not well spoken in English? And then to blame him for not saying much and say that is why they gave more, because the other two said a lot more and spoke at length. It's such rubbish if you go read that stuff. But that's just me. Maybe I'm over emotional.
Yeah, and I think one must not be emotional about this stuff. I've been involved in this disciplinary hearings. It all depends who's sitting on the bench and who's there. For me, it's a simple thing. If you take it to a court of law, to be thrown out because there's not enough evidence. End of the story.
But how do you're already guilty and you have to prove your innocence. So how do you prove your innocence, and how do you disprove what they said?
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's a waste of time to go and keep on fighting it. They're going to stand by what they say. We can do what we want. We can take it to the courts, as we say. I don't know. We're going to lose a lot of money. It's the process. It is what it is. It's not fair. Take it and move on. I would not spend a lot of time on it. He's a good kid. He's going to learn from it. But the fact it's not a fair process, and there's nothing's going to change it. And I think it's old news now.
Eugene, that's why I've got you on the show, because your calmness and wisdom is what keeps me from. I'll probably be like Puerto. I'd probably get a few snot claps as well, because I would say things that I shouldn't be saying. So on that note, that's it from me, Jan de Koning, and my friend.
Loffie Elof.
Until next week, when we'll have some more interesting stuff for you and another good guest.